A tremor ran through the city, not of earth, but of fear. Obsidian City lived under a perpetual twilight, not the gentle fade of dusk, but a thick, oppressive darkness that clung to the brick and steel, seeping into the very bones of its inhabitants. It had started subtly, a series of prolonged power outages, then whispers of disappearances, escalating into the reign of the Obsidian Gang, a brutal collective who didn't just kill, they cultivated fear. Their methods were insidious, less about brute force and more about psychological warfare. Propaganda posters, scrawled in dripping black paint, plastered every corner, whispering of the futility of resistance, the inevitability of despair. Sinister sonic drones, emanating from hidden locations, pulsed through the city at unpredictable intervals, inducing nausea and a gnawing anxiety that settled deep in the gut. The air itself felt thick with dread, a suffocating blanket woven from uncertainty and terror. Yet, amidst this oppressive gloom, life stubbornly flickered. Dimly lit speakeasies hummed with hushed conversations, the scent of cheap whiskey and desperation mingling in the air. Street vendors, their faces etched with worry, still hawked meager wares under flickering gas lamps, their voices barely above a whisper. Obsidian City was choked, but not yet dead. In the heart of this stifled city, in a cramped apartment above a struggling boxing gym, lived Jack Stone. They called him The Rock in the dimly lit fight clubs, a moniker earned through grit and sheer unwavering force. His apartment was Spartan, dominated by a heavy punching bag and the ghosts of past battles. Scars, both visible and invisible, mapped his body, a roadmap of resilience. He was a mountain of a man, muscles corded like steel cables beneath a perpetually damp t-shirt. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, held a weariness that belied his imposing physique. Yet within them, a flicker of unwavering resolve burned bright. Around his thick wrist, Jax wore a worn leather bracelet, intricately braided and faded with time. It was a memento from his sister, Alara, lost to the city's underbelly years ago, a gaping wound that had never truly healed. Alara's memory was the engine that drove him, the silent promise etched onto his soul. He had failed her once, succumbing to the fear that had already begun to creep through Obsidian City even then. Now, watching the city choke under a suffocating blanket of fear, a fear far more potent and calculated than anything he had witnessed before, Jax knew he couldn't stand by and watch history repeat itself. The Obsidian Gang wasn't just murdering bodies, they were murdering hope, extinguishing the very spirit of Obsidian City, and with it, the memory of Alara. He had to act, not just for revenge, but for the countless others who were slowly being consumed by the darkness. The tremor of fear in the city was growing stronger, and Jack Stone knew with a chilling certainty that the time for whispers was over. It was time for a roar. Jack started his fight in the grimy underbelly of Obsidian City, the very places the Obsidian Gang preyed upon. He moved like a shadow, his presence a low rumble that disrupted the gang's carefully constructed fearscape. He began with whispers, not of fear, but of defiance. In the dimly lit boxing gym between rounds of brutal sparring, he spoke to the young fighters, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "They want you scared," he'd growl, his voice resonating with a quiet intensity. "They feed on it. But fear is a choice. Courage, that's a choice too. And it's contagious." His actions spoke louder than words. He disrupted gang operations, not with reckless violence, but with calculated precision. He freed captured merchants from extortion rackets, not just by force, but by exposing the gang's lies to the terrified communities. He tore down propaganda posters, replacing them with simple messages of hope, hand-painted on scraps of wood. "Light will return. We are not alone. Remember who we are." Initially, people recoiled. Fear was a cage they had built around themselves, and stepping outside felt like stepping into the abyss. They whispered warnings, their voices trembling. "Don't provoke them, Jax. They'll crush you. They control everything." But Jax persisted. He discovered the source of the sonic drones, abandoned subway tunnels beneath the city, repurposed by the gang. He didn't destroy them outright. He studied them, recognizing the technology was crude, more psychological than truly damaging. He realized the gang's power wasn't supernatural, but rooted in manipulation, in exploiting existing anxieties and vulnerabilities. They were masters of propaganda, rumor-mongering, and staged acts of brutality, amplified by the oppressive darkness that shrouded the city. He found an unlikely ally in Maya, a young woman with nimble fingers and sharper wits. She was a tech-savvy, street artist, her vibrant graffiti usually the only splashes of color in the monochrome city. Maya had lost her brother to the gang, another victim swallowed by the darkness. She understood the power of information, the way fear could be weaponized. Together, they started to dismantle the gang's fear machine from within. Maya used her knowledge of the city's hidden networks to trace the source of the propaganda, discovering it was being printed in a seemingly abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. Their investigation led them to Elias Thorne, a former city councilman, now a shell of a man living in fear-ridden isolation. Jax, initially suspicious, sensed a deeper story. Thorne, broken and haunted, confessed. He had been coerced by the gang years ago, forced to use his political influence to facilitate their rise. He revealed a shocking truth. The Obsidian gang's leader, known only as the Shadow, was not some shadowy figure from the outside. He was someone from within Obsidian City, someone who understood its vulnerabilities intimately. Thorne, consumed by guilt and fear, had been providing the gang with information, unknowingly perpetuating their reign of terror. His betrayal was born not of malice, but of crippling fear, the very weapon the gang wielded so effectively. Thorne, seeking redemption, offered Jax crucial information: the location of the Shadow's headquarters, hidden within the city's oldest power station, now ironically the source of the city's manufactured darkness. The stress was mounting. Gang patrols became more frequent, their brutality escalating. Jax and Maya were constantly looking over their shoulders, the city feeling like a tightening noose. But with each act of defiance, with each whispered word of hope, a flicker of solidarity began to ignite in the darkness. People started to leave small offerings of food and supplies for Jax and Maya, anonymous acts of courage in the face of overwhelming fear. The tide was turning, slowly, imperceptibly. But the darkness was about to face a storm. The power station loomed, a monolith of decaying industry in the heart of Obsidian City, its skeletal frame silhouetted against the perpetual twilight. This was the Shadow's lair, the heart of the darkness. Jax, Maya, and a small group of brave souls they had gathered, the young boxers, a few defiant merchants, even Elias Thorne seeking to atone, moved through the city like ghosts, their hearts pounding a rhythm of fear and resolve. Inside the power station, the air thrummed, with a low menacing hum, amplified by the sonic drones emanating from hidden speakers. Gang members, their faces masked, patrolled the labyrinthine corridors, their movements predatory. Jax led the charge, a battering ram of muscle and fury. He moved with brutal efficiency, each strike a thunderclap in the oppressive silence, clearing a path through the gang's ranks. Maya, nimble and quick, disabled security systems, her tech skills proving as potent as Jax's brute force. The confrontation was brutal, a desperate struggle in the heart of darkness. Gang members, fueled by fear and fanaticism, fought with vicious intensity. But something was shifting. As Jax and his allies fought, their courage became a beacon, pushing back against the suffocating fear. The whispers of defiance had become a roar. They reached the central control room, the source of the city's artificial darkness. There, amidst flickering screens and humming machinery, stood the Shadow. He wasn't a monstrous figure, but a man, gaunt and pale, his eyes burning with a cold, unsettling intensity. He wore no mask, revealing a face Jax recognized with a sickening lurch in his gut. Marcus Thorne, Elias's son, believed to be dead years ago, a casualty of the city's earlier descent into chaos. "Jack Stone," Marcus hissed, his voice laced with venom and a strange, twisted sadness. "You always were so predictable, driven by sentimentality, by weakness." Marcus revealed his motive, a perverse desire to purify Obsidian City, to strip away its hope and expose its inherent darkness. He believed fear was the only true order, a brutal but necessary control. His own past trauma, the loss of his family in the city's earlier upheavals, had twisted his grief into a weapon. The fight was personal. Jax and Marcus clashed, a brutal ballet of strength and desperation. Marcus, surprisingly agile, fought with a ferocity born of years of suppressed rage. Jax, injured and weary, felt the weight of the city's fear pressing down on him, the memory of Alara a sharp ache in his heart. He was losing. Then Maya acted. She didn't fight physically, but she fought strategically. Using her tech, she bypassed the control panels, targeting the sonic drone system. With a surge of power, she overloaded the system, not just silencing the drones, but sending a powerful counter-frequency through the city. It wasn't sound, but a feeling, a wave of pure, unadulterated hope. The effect was immediate and profound. Gang members faltered, their fear-fueled aggression collapsing. In the control room, Marcus stumbled, clutching his head, the counter-frequency disrupting his carefully constructed fearscape. Jax seized the opportunity, unleashing a final, earth-shattering blow that sent Marcus crashing to the ground. The room fell silent, the oppressive hum replaced by an echoing stillness. Jax, battered and bruised, stood over Marcus, not with triumph, but with a profound weariness. He had won the battle, but the war against fear was far from over. As the counter-frequency pulsed through Obsidian City, something extraordinary happened. Flickering streetlights, dormant for months, sputtered back to life. Dim glimmers of light pierced the obsidian shroud, tentative, but undeniable. The darkness was receding. The immediate aftermath was chaotic, a flurry of activity in the newly illuminated power station. Gang members, disoriented and demoralized, surrendered or scattered into the shadows. Elias Thorne, his face etched with a mixture of grief and relief, approached his fallen son. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a profound sorrow for the path Marcus had chosen. Maya worked tirelessly, disabling the remaining fear-inducing devices, her movements quick and efficient, fueled by adrenaline and a sense of hard-won victory. Jax, leaning heavily against a console, watched as the first rays of dawn, pale and hesitant, began to break through the perpetual twilight. Outside, the city was stirring. People emerged from their homes, blinking in the unfamiliar light, their faces a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope. The fear, while not entirely vanquished, had loosened its grip. The sonic drones were silent. The propaganda posters were being torn down, replaced by Maya's vibrant graffiti, now celebrating not fear, but resilience and solidarity. The rhythm of Obsidian City changed abruptly. The hushed whispers were replaced by tentative conversations, growing louder with each passing hour. The streets, once deserted after dusk, began to fill with people, drawn out by the shared experience of liberation. There were losses. Some of Jax's allies were injured. Some captured gang members were lynched in the initial surge of anger, a grim reminder of the darkness they had endured. Jax himself was wounded, his body aching, but the pain was overshadowed by a profound sense of relief. He had faced the darkness and emerged, not unscathed, but unbroken. He saw Maya, her face smudged with grime, but alight with a triumphant smile, and for the first time, a genuine smile touched his own weary features. Elias Thorne, though burdened by grief, found a new purpose, helping to organize the city's recovery, his past betrayal, a constant reminder of the cost of fear. The emotional release was palpable. People wept, laughed, embraced strangers. The collective trauma was beginning to surface, but it was being met not with fear, but with a burgeoning sense of community, a shared understanding of what they had endured and overcome. The darkness had been pushed back, but the fight for light had just begun. The obsidian shroud didn't vanish overnight. The psychological scars of fear ran deep, and the physical darkness, ingrained for so long, lingered. But a transformation had begun. Electricity, painstakingly restored, flickered back on across the city, street by street, house by house, a tangible symbol of hope rekindled. People worked together, neighbors helping neighbors, cleaning up the remnants of the gang's reign, rebuilding shattered storefronts, repainting defaced walls. The city, once choked by fear, now breathed with a renewed, if still fragile, spirit. Jack Stone, no longer just the rock but a symbol of defiance, stood in the heart of Obsidian City, watching the dawn break fully, painting the sky in hues of gray and hesitant pink. He was tired, his body weary, but his spirit was alight. He had not defeated the darkness alone. He had ignited the spark of solidarity, reminding the people of Obsidian City that their strength lay not in individual might, but in collective courage. The message was clear. Fear was a weapon, but solidarity was a shield. The Obsidian gang had sought to control through terror, but they had underestimated the resilience of the human spirit, the innate desire for connection, for light in the darkness. Jax had sacrificed his own peace, his own solitude, to fight for his community, driven by the memory of Alara and the promise he had made to himself. He hadn't brought back the light single-handedly, but he had shown them where to find it within themselves, within each other. The ending was not idyllic. The threat of darkness still lingered, the scars of fear remained, and the work of rebuilding was immense. But there was optimism, a cautious, realistic hope that bloomed in the newly illuminated streets. Obsidian City was not magically healed, but it was awake. People were talking, laughing, planning together. Maya, now a recognized artist of hope, continued to paint vibrant murals across the city, her art a constant reminder of their collective victory. Elias Thorne, finding redemption in service, dedicated himself to rebuilding the community, his past a stark lesson in the corrosive power of fear. Jax, his arc complete, found a different kind of peace. He was no longer just fighting for revenge or for a ghost. He was fighting for a future built on solidarity, on trust, on the enduring human spirit that could, even in the deepest darkness, find its way back to the light. The tremor of fear was gone, replaced by a new vibration, the steady, hopeful heartbeat of a city reborn.